Hi everyone, scenographers, theatre, architects, technicians and anyone here watching us. The Cyprus Centre CY Stat welcomes you to this online presentation and discussion panel. Directors, artists, consultants, designers, engineers and producers are with us for 2 days sharing their thoughts. We will have 2 sessions today and 2 tomorrow. The first session, coming in a couple of minutes, is Mr. Panos Ikonomou, acoustic consultant, managing director of Panacoustics and PE Mediterranean Acoustics Research and Development. And he will present the theatre and hall acoustics. Listen carefully. Maybe at the end of this session, you will be able to choose a specific seat in a theatre and have a reason to do so. The second session, after Mr. Ikonomou, is the audio technology. It's a discussion panel with Andreas Pavlou, technical director at Rialto Theatre, George Kollias, composer, producer, and sound engineer, Andrea Piemonti, consultant and AV system designer, and Nicolas Stavrinos, head engineer and AV system programmer. Tomorrow, we will have 2 sessions hosted by Mrs. Marina Maleni. The first session tomorrow will be building a strategy based on acoustics and technology. And the panelists are Mrs. Georgia Deutscher, Chief Executive Rialto Theatre, Mr. Vassos Argyridis, Director of Limassol Patihio Theatre, and Mr. Andy Berchili, Artistic Director of Kypria International Festival. The second session tomorrow will be the audio art and the artist. We must listen carefully to Lia Haragi, performer, vocal and artist, Yiannis Christofidis, music and sound designer, George Kollias, composer, producer, performer and sound designer, and Dr. Christina Georgiou, international awarded composer and screenwriter. These are for tomorrow. Let's start with Mr. Panos Ikonomou and Theatre and Hall Acoustic. Hi, Panos.
Hello, Yiannis. How are you?
Glad to have you with us. What are we going to hear today?
We're going to talk about theatre hall acoustics. In other words, the acoustics of drama and classical music performance venues.
We are excited. Well, let's go for this presentation.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Panos Ikonomou, and as I said, I will be presenting the acoustics of drama and classical music performance venues. Right now, we are seeing on our screen at the top the ancient theatre at Epidavros in Greece, which can take up to 14,000 spectators. At the bottom, we see the Herod's Odeon in Athens. And the reason I'm showing those 2 is because the top one was done by the Greeks, and the other one was done by the Romans. The bottom one is the precursor of the enclosed theatre. But before we go any further, I would like to say a few things about myself. I studied mechanical engineering and I did my postgraduate studies in acoustics, and ever since I deal with acoustics. I have set up 2 companies. The first one, Panacoustics Acoustics Consultants, dealing with offering services in acoustics. And the second one is PE Mediterranean Acoustics Research and Development, which develops acoustical software. Well, if we want to go to a performance, we're going to have to buy a ticket. And if we have to buy a ticket, we have to choose from a ticket plan like similar to this. So the question I'm sure everybody asks oneself is, where am I going to sit? Is there a better place, or is it the best place? Or it's a question one has to answer. Maybe there isn't a good seat. Maybe all of them are good. Let's try to answer that question. But before we do that, let's talk about cars. Question: what's the purpose of a car? And the answer is to transport people and goods. Question: why are there so many different types of cars? The answer is because they must fulfill specific tasks. Some have to be small and fast, others big and heavy, others have to be on-road, off-road, and therefore one can say a single type of car cannot fulfill all requirements. Well, the same thing applies to buildings that offer themselves for performances. We have drama, We have classical music, we have opera, ballet, musicals, cinema, amplified music clubs, and so on. The point I'm trying to make is that not a single building can accommodate all those purposes. Therefore, they have to have a specific task. We're going to be concentrating on drama and music. On the left-hand side, we can see the section of a theater, and on the right-hand side, we can see a section of a music hall. Just looking at them, we can tell that there are big differences. The first thing is that the theater has a stage tower. The music hall hasn't got any. The music hall has the musicians sitting together with the audience, together in the same volume, whilst in the theater, we have the auditorium and the stage separately. And then we can see that the music hall is much bigger than the theater auditorium. Let's go and speculate how drama evolved, because nobody knows. We're just speculating. Drama began in open spaces to accommodate audience, a lot of audience. The Greek called such spaces theatron, which means the place where one can see a spectacle, theama. So you can see the relationship, theater, theatro. Based on common sense, the audience were seated in circles at equal distance from the stage. That's the first thing. The second thing is that they provided visual contact with the stage by sloping the audience area. And theaters were built far away from the sea or forest simply to avoid air-generated noise. Furthermore, usually those theaters were built in natural slopes, in other words, hills that have a slope, and they chose a location that they would have the wind blowing towards the audience so that the sound can be carried with the wind. Actors were trained in orthophony, which means speech training. One has to be clear as to what he's saying, most probably unlike myself. But in any case, and they wore masks that enhanced the sound, and that made the contact between stage and audience very good. Closed theaters evolved with the Romans. They created the odeons. And those closed spaces had benefits simply because they kept the speech or the sound energy confined, so there was a buildup of energy, so it was louder. But the price was that there was prolongation of sound, what we call reverberation time, reverberation. So reverberation is the prolongation of sound, and the definition of reverberation time everybody talks about is that it's the time it takes for sound to die out by 60 decibels. Another thing one has to bear in mind is that reverberation time is longer in bigger spaces. That's going to be relevant to what we're going to be talking about later. Now let's speculate how things started with music. Written music began in places of worship or temples. Reverberation of closed spaces transformed priests from ordinary people to representatives of the divine as their voices inspired awe. In the Western world, music was initially devoted to God, and thus it was played in churches. Music gradually moved from the churches to the palaces. And when we talk about palaces, we mean big rooms, and that's where chamber music evolved. It was a small auditorium. Then music was moved to palace theaters where they were doing small operas and performances. It was between the 18th and the 19th century that concert halls started to appear. Richard Wagner, the composer, was the first to design a building dedicated to music, mainly for operas, with acoustics in mind. And it's the Bayreuth, which was completed in 1876. So one can say that Wagner was the first acoustician, theater acoustician. But before we answer the question, where are we going to be sitting, let's see why do we need acoustics, and we're going to listen to some audio demonstrations. I think the pictures speak by themselves. A lot of noise in crowded areas. So we need acoustics to deal with that. We have noisy offices, we have noisy restaurants, we are not able to work or enjoy ourselves. We need architectural acoustics because we are building spaces dedicated, such as this, the one behind me, or in the picture, to make sure that there is even sound distribution, low background noise from either traffic or building services. We need room acoustics to be able to minimize sound coloration in small rooms, such as recording studios and home theaters. We need acoustics because we need to have noise control in our neighborhoods. Environmental acoustics to be able to deal with noise pollution. Underwater acoustics to protect life in underwater life. And unfortunately also war machines. And we've got psychoacoustics, which is a big subject matter, and it defines the criteria by which we say something is acceptable in terms of acoustics or not. How do we measure sound? We use a sound level meter similar to the picture that you can see, and we measure it in units of decibels. Originally, the unit was bell, in honor of Graham Bell, but the unit was too crude, so they decided to make it more fine, so they decided to divide it by 10. So let's listen to what decibels sound like. I'm going to be playing some noise now that is at a certain level, and then I'm going to be increasing it by 10 decibels. Ideally, and if your headphones or your systems that you're listening to this are working without compression, you ought to be able to sense that the intensity has increased by to double. In other words, if you had a knob of an amplifier and it was showing 4, it's like turning it up to 8. So let's listen to it. I could play it again. Right. So we get a feel as to what we mean by 10 decibels. Now let's get a feel, what do we mean by 1 decibel, changes of 1 decibel, 3 decibels, 6 decibels, to see how perceptible this change is. With 1 decibel, we can hardly hear the difference. With 3 decibels, we can clearly hear the difference, but 6 dB difference is very apparent. Mind you, I want to say that these demonstrations are published by the Acoustical Society of America, so I'm grateful to what they have done. Let's listen to these 3 different cases. Right. Every time we double the distance between the speaker and the microphone, or a source and the receiver, then ideally we have a 6 dB decrease in intensity. So let's hear somebody talking at the microphone at certain distances, and we can hear the differences. He's going to be doubling the distance.
I am now speaking to you from a distance of 25 centimeters from the microphone. I am now speaking to you from a distance of 50 centimeters from the microphone. I am now speaking to you from a distance of 1 meter from the microphone. I am now speaking to you from a distance of 2 meters from the microphone.
Right. Next, light has a spectrum with various colors, the reds, the blues, and so on. The same happens with sound. We've got the low frequencies, the mid frequencies, and the high frequencies. I'm going to be playing 3 tones in the low, mid, and high frequencies to be able to experience the difference. The low frequency sound might not be heard if you've got a laptop. And now we come to a very important issue. How does reverberation interferes with speech clarity, or noise? How does it interfere with speech clarity? We're going to be listening to some examples now. The first with reverberation time. Imagine that you are in a big space with hard surfaces and somebody's talking, and you're going to experience that, and then we move that person to a smaller room with soft materials.
From ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night, good Lord deliver us. From ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night, good Lord deliver us.
Right. As I said, these are the demonstrations published by the Acoustical Society of America, so whatever it's been said, it's not our responsibility. This particular example is very relevant to what we're going to be showing later, because you cannot stage a theater performance in a cathedral simply because you're going to have the effects you just heard, the man talking in a big space. And the opposite happens as well. You cannot have a church organ performance in the outdoors simply because an organ is an instrument that has pipes, and pipes haven't got any reverberation, and any sound that its sound becomes rich because it's supported by the environment that is usually played, such as a cathedral. That's why we're enjoying the church organ music. Now let's listen to somebody talking, and I'm going to be introducing some noise to see how it doesn't affect speech clarity.
From ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night, good Lord deliver us.
Right, so we can see that even noise makes things worse. Before we talk about differences between theater and music halls, let's talk about auditorium shapes. On the left, we see a fan shape. Now, this is a top view of various situations. On the left, we see a fan shape auditorium. In the middle, the shoebox shape. And on the right, the inverse fan shape. Let's see how side walls affect reflections and which is the best to apply. I'm going to have to move to the computer here. Here, on the left, we see the fan shape, and we can see 3 actors and 5 microphones. We can see that these 2 microphones do not receive any reflections, and this actor here is not able to send any reflections because of the angle of that wall. Now, let's move to the shoebox, and we can see all 3 actors are able to reach the microphones, but this microphone doesn't receive any sound, any reflection, I mean, sorry. And then we can see that the inverse shape, fan shape offers reflections from all actors and to all microphones. Now let's check the main differences between buildings for drama and music, which are likely to affect acoustics. Please note that these are just clues because certain features appear in both, so there are no hard rules here. No strict rules apply. On the left-hand side, we can see whatever features we have in music hall, and on the right, whatever features are in the theaters. But one common feature they have is that we always want to have good sound distribution. And to achieve that, you need to have good sound diffusion. How do we achieve this? On the left-hand side, we can see a concert hall in Moscow. I'm going to be showing more pictures of this later on. That we can see wall reliefs that send sound, that scatter sound in all directions. On the right-hand side, we can see a theater that I have designed and recently started operating. And we can see on the side walls lots of wall reliefs that scatter sound, and the ceiling also scatters sound, and at the back we can see some sound diffusing elements. At this point, I'm going to have to move to the laptop to be able to magnify certain features. Sorry. Right. So this picture is of the Birmingham Concert Hall. As we can see, there is no stage tower. It has a very high ceiling, and in case music halls do have a lower ceiling, they have to send sound to the side walls. And the reason is very simple. We want to hear sound from the side walls. So imagine you're sitting at this position here. The direct sound reaches you there, and then first you receive the side wall reflection, but the ceiling is too high to be able to reach you before the side wall. So we always want to have the side wall reflections. And I'm going to get into this, more into this later. I'm trying to magnify, but apparently it doesn't magnify. It doesn't matter. I wanted to magnify the cost and when was this built. In order to be able to achieve such acoustics, you have to spend a lot of money. And the cost of this hall was about $250 million. And that was in 1991. Now, let's move to the theater on the right-hand side. We can see that it has a stage tower. And if the theater is big enough to accommodate music as well, we're able to use the orchestra shell in order to be able to send sound, instead of going to the tower, directly to the audience. It has a lower ceiling, and it sends the sound directly to the audience. And the reverberation time is of the order of 1 up to 1.2 seconds. I forgot to mention that the ideal, sorry, there is a technical problem. May I come back to this? All right, I'm okay. Sorry about this. Yeah, now I'm able to magnify things. Right, okay, let's move to the theater. As we can see, the sound is being reflected off the ceiling. It doesn't need to go on the side walls. And the reverberation time, the ideal reverberation time, it has to be about 1.9, about 2 seconds. It takes about, in other words, 2 seconds for the sound to die by 60 dB. Now, let's move to the next slide. In music halls, we have mildly sloped seating to allow back wall reflections to reach our ears. And what you're seeing here is the famous Vienna Concert Hall, which was built in 1870 and still one of the top 3 halls in the world in terms of acoustics. And it has a capacity of about 3,000 people. How do they achieve this? Well, as you can see, firstly, there is no slope. It's just a flat area where the audience is sitting. And before I mention how they achieve that, if we go on the right-hand side, we can see that the theater here has a very steep rake slope. And actually, what it does, it prevents any sound coming from the back, because at the back, audience are sitting, and they absorb sound so that we don't get any reflections from the back walls. So this is something we don't want in music halls. Let's see how they achieve to accommodate 3,000 people in this auditorium. You can see that the seats are barely padded. The back there is no upholstery, only on the seat. The distance between seats is about 85 centimeters, very hard to get into and move. And finally, the stage height is 1 meter or even higher. You can see in this picture that even standing up, you are not able to see the stage. Contrary to the music hall, seats in a theater can be, they don't need to be, but they can be heavily upholstered. They have a bigger row distance, typically 95 centimeters or more. And the stage is usually 80 centimeters, and it even has a slope. In other words, at the front, if the audience is here, the front is 80 centimeters, and it has a slope towards the back so that the audience can see people at the back better. It also gives an illusion of perspective. It makes the stage look bigger. In music halls, we try to avoid paneling. Panels absorb low-frequency sounds. How do they do that? Imagine that you're sitting in your office or at your home, and a truck passes by, and everything starts to rattle, to vibrate. How do they vibrate? It's because sound energy is translated into kinetic energy, vibration, and therefore, whenever there is a translation of energy from one type to another, there is a loss, absorption. So that's how we absorb low-frequency sounds. In studio terms, we call them bass traps. So in music halls, we don't want to have any low-frequency absorption. There we can see that this hall at Lucerne in Switzerland, I'm going to be showing you the picture later, we have at the low frequencies, it goes up to 3 seconds. It demonstrates that there is no paneling, or if there is, it's controlled. In other words, the architects and the acousticians there, they made sure that they are going to be using massive materials that do not vibrate easily, so they do not absorb low-frequency sounds. On the right-hand side, we can see also that they use another technique as well. This is the reverberation chamber, this area here. And here we can see some doors opening into the reverberation chamber. If they want to prolong sound, all they have to do is open the doors, the sound goes into this chamber, and the reverberation times becomes longer. And before I show you the picture, just to mention that this was built in 1998, and it cost about 200 million, whatever the units those there. Anyway, it's a big number, so it ought to impress us, and we ought to have respect for what is needed to pay to get such acoustics. By the way, this hall is considered to be the best in terms of acoustics in the world. Now, just by looking at this reverberation time plot, I can tell that there is a lot of paneling, simply because at high frequencies we have higher reverberation times than lower frequencies, which means there must be panels. And inspecting this picture, we can see a lot of wooden panels. Now we come to a bit of a tricky part. It involves psychoacoustics. I think I'm going to demonstrate this with my hands. On the horizontal plane, on this plane, we are able to detect with an accuracy of 2-3 degrees where the sound is coming from. If the sound is coming from this direction, it means that the direct sound is reaching this ear first, and then the other ear second. There are situations where it has to bend, diffract around my head. So the point I'm trying to make is that due to this first signal, we are able to have a cue as to where the sound is. So in concert halls, we ought to be able to have our eyes closed and can tell that the horn is situated somewhere there on stage, and the first violins are situated there, simply because the cues we receive from the sound, the direct sound, and because of the presence of the object of our head. This is what we call interaural difference. The higher the interaural difference is, the better it is for music. Now, imagine that we have a sound source that is moving in this plane, on the vertical plane, right between my ears. Okay. If I close my eyes, I cannot tell if it's in the front, above me, or behind me, simply because the sound is reaching my ears at the same time. And this is what we call mono. And this is not what we want in music. We want to be surrounded. We want to be immersed. So it's good to have interaural difference in theaters as well, but it's not of primary importance. So here we see ceiling reflections in the theater. The same thing here as well, more clearly. And here we can see that we have reflections from side walls. But still, it is mono. It's not stereo, or surround, if I may use those expressions. They're not correct. The reason is that whatever object there is on this side, it's the same on this side. Therefore, we have a symmetrical situation. In music, as we said, we want to have interaural differences, so if we have such a situation, we ought to sit somewhere, not in the center, somewhere off-center, to be able to get a richer sound. Just to put everything together, ears, when it comes to musicals, ears are of primary importance. There isn't much action taking place on stage, so you don't need to be able to see. The bigger interaural difference, the better is for music. Sound should arrive from non-symmetrical sidewall reflections. The use of inverse fan shapes and vineyard audience areas, I'm going to be showing you pictures about the vineyard audience areas, is better. And the punchline is that we have to be immersed in sound when we are listening to music. Sound has to come from all directions. When it comes to theaters, of primary importance is the eyes. There is a lot of action taking place, so whatever is happening, we don't need to know where the actor is, simply because we can see where the action is. So sound is of secondary importance. It doesn't matter whether we have the ceiling reflections or symmetrical wall reflections. As I said, the visual cues come from the stage. Let's see some pictures now to be able of music halls, because for those who are in Cyprus, here in Cyprus we haven't got music halls. So I would like to highlight the benefits, or let's say the features of music halls. This is a music hall in Moscow, and we can see that it has a lot of sitting areas. This is what we call vineyard areas, audience areas. How do they get these side walls and side wall reflections and the back wall reflections? Well, if you look closely, you're going to be able to see that everywhere people are seated, there are side walls and back walls. So they have a rich sound no matter where they sit, even at far distances from the stage. Furthermore, we have a lot of diffusion because everything has a relief. Look at all these details. That's why they cost so much. A lot of scattering objects. Here, this is the Tokyo City Opera Hall. I cannot even conceive I cannot understand how they conceived this shape, because it's basically like a pyramid with inclined walls, but we can see the typical features. No slopes for the audience. Side walls are much closer to the audience rather than the ceiling. And we have a lot of objects that scatter sound. Let's look at this picture. Look how high the ceiling is. It's a beautiful hall. And finally, it's a hall in Hamburg. And the reason I'm showing you this is because it's of variable acoustics. It can be used for symphony orchestra. We can see the stage here. But then they can change things and they can have a proscenium. And when they have opera, they have the stage and the pit goes down and the orchestra is seated there. And we have all the other features that are needed for music to be able to have either ballet or opera. Finally, I wanted to show you Pathion Theatre in Limassol, which I have designed, just to explain what were the processes. It used to be a cinema, an old cinema, which was renovated for mainly theater performances. What I tried to do was to try to accommodate also some music features in order to be able to have longer reverberation time. But of course, bear in mind that being a small theater, unless you have a big volume, you cannot achieve a higher reverberation time. Nevertheless, these are the construction stages. You can see a lot of structural things above the ceiling. And we can see in this picture that there is a pit that is being used when there is opera or ballet, and the musicians are seated here. You can also see the air conditioning vents under the seats. Basically, the air travels from under the seats to the ceiling. And we can see other features on the side walls for diffusion here as well. And the back walls are scattering sound in various directions. Those are another picture. This is during construction, and this is when it's finished. I wanted to focus a bit on this picture to show this ceiling. You can see that this ceiling is open. In other words, sound can travel into the space above it. This is what we call variable acoustics. What I have done there was to install motorized louvers that they can open and close depending on what kind of performance there is. And the maestro can even adjust the inclination according to his taste. Above those louvers, there is about 2-3 meters of space, so it's a huge space that can prolong reverberation time. We can increase reverberation time of about 1.5 seconds. Not a lot. As I said, symphony halls need big spaces in order to be able to perform at 1.9 seconds. Yeah. And on the right-hand side, we can see the line array speakers used, and they're also used in this theater. And we're going to be having a discussion after this about sound systems. And that's a sort of a hint as to what is going to follow with the discussion. So let's come to the question. Where do we sit? If you're going to watch music, I would say this is the stage. Do not sit close to the stage. I would sit a bit far away from the stage to be able to get immersed, so I don't get just direct sound. I can get lots of side wall reflections and back wall reflections, and definitely not in the center. When it comes to drama, I wouldn't mind sitting closer to the stage to be able to hear them and see them well. And it doesn't really matter if you're sitting in the center, because you're going to be complementing the positioning of the sources with your eyes. Nevertheless, if the design of the venue is good, then sound distribution ought to be good, and it doesn't really matter where you sit. And as I said, these are just some indications as to what one should do. Let's move to line array systems. That is going to take us to the panel discussion that is going to follow. I want to show you that these are old line array systems taken from the Audio Engineering Society's journal. In this particular case, we're looking at 18-inch drivers put together. The mutual impedance enhances sound and makes it much more efficient. That's one of the reasons they do it, and they also achieve directivity. On the right-hand side, we can see a Philips type. These were developed sometimes in the mid-50s. So let's talk about speakers and line arrays. Let's assume that we have the perfect speaker in the anechoic chamber. We have the flat response, and we're wondering, is this going to work in another space like this? Let's see. What I'm showing here is the microphone and the speaker, and I have shown the man just for scale reasons. We are in the open. There is no reflections. It's just direct sound. There is nothing. And indeed, we can see that we have a good response. We can get the good response. Now, we introduce a floor. And now we don't have the direct sound. We have a floor reflection as well. So two sound waves are reaching the microphone, but they have a path difference. This path difference creates interference. And this interference messes up the frequency response, as we can see on the right-hand side. Light red, it used to be the perfect sound, and now we've got this response, which is greenish color. Now, let's see the performance of a line array. Mind you, the speaker is down there, and the line array is not tuned. But we're wondering, is this a good performance, or is it bad? Is this something we want? Let's see. If we move the microphone on the axis of the line array, we can see that we can get the perfect sound. Any dips here is because of interference at high frequencies. So basically what the line array does is to focus sound on its axis. Let's see how it performs, line arrays perform in theaters. For the sake of the example, we are using a shoebox auditorium, and we're going to be examining the directivity of line arrays. How did we create the line arrays in this example? All I had to do is to stack monopole sources in a model. Monopole sources are those that radiate uniformly in all directions. So all I had to do was to put monopole sources on top of each other, and I have created a line array. We're going to be mapping sound on these virtual surfaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to be comparing the sound distribution on these 4 virtual surfaces with the monopole source. By doing so, we can get these results. And we're going to be looking, and we can see that there are differences, but we're going to be looking in more detail by looking at the top view. And we can see top view, there isn't much of a difference because they radiate in a uniform way. Both sound systems radiate in a uniform way. The only difference is just that there is higher sound intensity on the right-hand side. Because there are more speakers. Thank you. Let's look at side view. And now we can see a big difference. Now all the sound is focused on the axis of the line array, whilst the monopole sound still radiates uniformly. Now look at the floor. The floor doesn't receive as much sound as in the center of the axis of the line array. This applies to the ceiling as well. So this is a good thing. If we don't want to have ceiling reflections, it means all we have to do is just to tilt the array or do it electronically with delays to tilt the axis of the array to focus on the audience. The same thing happens when we look at front view. Looking at the back wall, we can see that there is a concentration of sound on the back wall in the center. And as I said, all we have to do is just tilt geometrically the line arrays, or we can introduce time delays so that we can achieve the axis where we want it. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much. If there are some questions, I'm happy to answer. Yeah. Are there any questions?
Hi, Panos.
Yiannis.
Thank you very much for this. So excited. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
So, thank you, everybody. We're going to follow the next session with...
Thank you.
Thank you, Panos. Thank you. So we're going to follow this next session, okay, with the panelist, which is going to be the technical director at Rialto Theatre, Andreas Pavlou. George Kollias is a composer, producer, and a sound designer. Andrea Piemonti is a consultant and AV system designer, and Nicola Stavrinos, a head engineer and AV programmer. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. Of course, this is going to be recorded, and we're going to upload it afterwards to see it. And any questions you have, we will answer it as soon as possible, rather Panos or the engineers here. Thank you very much. See you in short. Hi everyone, and welcome back. We are here to discuss the audio technology. Let me introduce the panelist. Is Mr. Andreas Pavlou, is the technical director at Rialto Theatre. Is George Kollias, a composer, producer, and sound designer. Andrea Piemonti is a consultant and an AV system designer. And Nicola Stavrinos is a head engineer and AV system programmer. So let's start this discussion by talking about you, all right? Just introduce yourself, who you are, and in what position you are and what you do. Andreas.
Hi, thank you for calling me here. I'm Andreas Pavlou, Technical Director of Rialto Theatre. I've been to the organization since 2004 as a sound engineer, and the last 4 years as a Technical Director.
Thank you very much. George.
Good evening, thank you for the invitation. I'm saluting the great organization of this seminar. I am a composer, sound designer. I write music for theater and TV and all kind of projects. And I'm here to gain and give my opinions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Andrea.
Hi, Iano. Thank you very much for the invitation. Andrea Piemonti, Managing Director of ALA Equipment Company. 35 years in the industry, acting as a consultant for different sectors of the audio. Thank you again for having me here.
Thank you very much. Nicolas.
Hi, Jano. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
I'm the head of engineering and technology at ALA Equipment Company, where we obviously design and implement installations of audio, lighting, etc., but we'll stick to the audio part for this discussion.
Thank you very much. So let's start from the theatre. Andreas, can you tell us about the facilities in the theatre, the acoustics of the theatre, the audio system, and how you control this as a director, as a technical director?
Rialto Theatre is a multi-theatre. That means that we have in our theatre shows of theatre, dance performances, concerts, cinema, and whatever art has to do with art. That makes it more difficult in the way of giving sound reinforcement to all this. What I mean is the sound for theater is different than sound for music, for concert, and it's different for sound for a dance show.
And do you have these facilities? I mean, you know.
Okay, we have the theater was designed to have a flat sound, so we can give with the amplifying sound, with the help of the amplifying sound, to give to each kind of art the different help it needs. So we have, for concerts, we have live concerts, we have a digital console and a PA system with monitoring, so we can help the musicians
in all sorts of different performances.
in acoustic concert like Cyprus Orchestra.
A symphony orchestra. you mean,
We have to make a different kind of miking to give some help.
Do you really need a miking? I mean, seen the theatre and heard the acoustics of the venue. Do you really miking up symphony orchestra?
Yes, because we don't have the special acoustic for an acoustic orchestra.
You mean the acoustic shell?
Yes, the theatre is sound is flat. That's what is designed. Also, we have in art, we have performances of opera. We can remove the two front seats, the rows of seats, and we have a pit, an orchestra pit, where the orchestra goes in there. It holds up to 34, 35 people, 35 musicians. So the theatre can be available for the artists that sing in the opera. In that case, the theatre is performed like this, that can have the sound, and it doesn't need any miking. But for the ensemble orchestra, acoustic ensemble orchestra, it needs some little bit of reverberation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So let's go to George. George, how do technological facilities of a theatre, of any theatre, okay, in a means of audio always, affect the artist's creativeness? How affects you being creative and being, is that something that is important, or is just taking your creativeness and looking for a venue?
Thanks for the pass. I'm going to go historically for this question. I think it's going to answer your question as well. So starting back in the days, we used to burn CDs and have a double deck for crossing queues. And we had a stereo equipment on the out of the theater. The setup was usually stereo. We had a stereo setup and double deck CDs. These changed over the years. We went to the portable computers. We got a software that could play more than 2-3 sounds. And eventually, my first experience with multi-outputs was a 9.1 surround system that was portraying a big bombing of a town that was included in the play. What I'm saying is that this technological improvement, change, and grow give us the opportunity to present different outputs. Let's say it's not a stereo track anymore. We can have multiple tracks, and I've been in a situation where I had to have TV on stage. I had to have sound coming from the sides of the back of the theater, and sometimes a combo where either live music or mic'd actors were to be involved. My years of collaborating with Rialto Theatre have created this safety net for me. I know what I want to present, I know what I can present, and my creativity is launched to the maximum of the theatre's abilities. What I'm saying is that if you create anything, either music, sculpture, painting, the equipment is seriously affecting the outcome. The vision is there, the idea is there, but the way to communicate it is always depending on technology nowadays, because we are taking advantage of that multi-situation to give the audience something that maybe they don't have in their home, in their experiences from other theaters, from other shows. So we are pushing to that. The more we are given from the place that is hosting, the more we can actually be creative about it and be more efficient, more I'm not going to say to make an impression, but more to surprise or...
So you're always looking for a wow factor, yeah?
Yeah, I'm always looking to a way to give the idea, the feeling of the scene, of the play, of the situation in a way that is not expected, having the advantage of surprise towards the audience. We're not trying to capture them, or we're trying to give them maximum to the experience, because the more we communicate, the more we are salvaged by keeping it inside. So the venue always affects, and nowadays I think it's expected to at least a laptop, no? At least a laptop.
Right, so talking about communication, now I'm going to jump to Andrea as a consultant, okay, and a system design. It needs a lot of communication, yeah. I mean, how you develop a common language between owners of the theatre, which they have a vision, the technical directors or the architects which they built it, and all this communication has to be done as to decide at the end of the day what I'm designing, what I'm going to get there, what I'm going to put there.
So help me through this, because at the end there is always an answer on this, and this time. Invest in time with your client, invest in time with the owner, invest in time with the technician, invest in time with the architect. One point that we forgot quickly on the matter is that all these people, they have different needs.
Exactly.
If you talk with the owner, it's budget, it's money, okay? That in principle is the ABC of a good business. So we need to respect that part of the business, a budget. Of course, we cannot ask with $1 to build a theater. So we need to give a good evaluation of that. If you sit down with the technician, of course, I would like to have the best sound system, the best mic system, the best audio desk. So there is a compromise on all this, and this depends how you sit down and what trust you gain. I was quite interested before with my dear friend Panos, okay, about the acoustic of the theater, okay? Because we are saying sometimes I want this speaker, I want this line array, I want, first of all, we believe that line array is always a solution, okay? It's not always a solution, okay? But let's talk that if you have a theater and you have a good acoustic, that is why acoustic consultants are quite important, and to have the feelings with them, to have the trust, and to have the, at the end of the day, we want to match a goal, give the best possible to the client, but to gain, the most important things is to gain the trust of all the parts. If you don't have the trust of the sound engineer, it means that you may have the trust of the owners. But believe me, who is judging at the end is the audience. If you don't give the tools to the sound engineer to give it to you the result, you will not have the result.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. So it's good compromise, it's budget, it's technical, is the performance, and is the result that you want to give it. So the common language is spend time and do not overkill what you need at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we can design the best theater, even with one speaker, or, like Pano was saying, maybe you don't need even the speaker, if the acoustic of the theater is correct. So it's a good balance of all this.
Right, that's great. So let's go to Nicholas. I've got a good question for you. What are the challenges when installing a system? And I'm talking about the challenges you face facing a building. I'll give you an example. What comes in my brains is you have a building which is a 17th century, okay? Will you drill to put a speaker on the column? That's the challenges I'm talking about. That's kind of the challenges. Or running cables, I don't know from where. What's these challenges and how are you dealing with it?
Now, if you have a 17th century building that needs renovation, you're not going to drill, but obviously it's being renovated, so hopefully we can get to the structural engineer to put the correct points where we need them to hang a system. But before you go into a building, you need to evaluate the sound system. So there's some key questions that you need to ask and see how you can overcome them. Is it going to be loud enough? It doesn't have to be too loud, but you know, the person sitting in front needs to hear, and if it's a 5,000-seater, the guy sitting in the back also needs to hear. So you need to ask yourself, you need to design the system and see if it's going to be loud enough first of all. Can everyone hear? Because you don't want the person sitting in the back, even though he's paying for his ticket, you know, he has to have the same experience as the person who's in the VIP box.
Yeah.
So you first have to see if it's going to be loud enough, if everyone can hear. Will it feed back? Because that's another important thing.
That's on the design point of, you know, starting from there,
Yeah.
which you have to be involved. I understand that.
Yeah.
But you're given a design system,
Yeah.
and it comes there and say, "Whoops, wow, how do I install this?" I mean, there is times that this happen. Yeah, I mean,
No, when we're in the design phase, what happens is obviously you're going to have all the architectural drawings. You'll sit down with the acoustic consultants. You'll sit down with the theatre. You'll sit down with all departments. And you're not just going to go to a theatre and say, okay, I want to hang 2 speakers. Because you first have to see, is there a cable way to get there? Now, obviously, if it's a 17th century theatre that they're renovating, they're not just going to open the doors and say, please come in and hang my speakers. It's a process. So we're going to, before you even start, you get to the design, you need to get to the drawings, you need to know the weight of your speakers.
Definitely.
You need to know the weight of the cable, because yes, I can have a speaker that costs 100 kilos, but if my cable's another 50 kilograms, it plays on the loads, on the dynamic load of the speaker. If the speaker's moving, you need to have more dynamic load on your ceiling, because a static speaker is 100 kilos, but as soon as you start moving it up and down, it changes dynamics. So the whole design phase, before you even go to install, is done with structural engineers, it's done with acoustic consultants, and obviously you all put your heads together and figure out the best solution, because obviously I want to hang a sound system left and right in front of where the audience can see it, but the architect doesn't want to see it. So that's where you have to make compromises.
yeah, we've seen many times so overdoing it, or that thing with the 17th century building happens. That's why
Yeah.
I mentioned
No, it does happen, and obviously they don't want to see the speakers.
Yeah.
But coming from the sound side,
Yeah.
you know, you can't hide a speaker. Okay, you can sort of hide a speaker, but it is going to be visible, because if I put a speaker behind a concrete wall, you're not going to hear anything, and it's going to sound bad.
Mind you, with technology moving so fast, you never know. But so, thank you very much for that. I will go back to Andreas and ask you. It's a lot of communication. We all agree. What about communication and understanding all these performances and people they coming, production people, sound engineers, performers, artists? How do you handle all this communication, and how you manage to put them together and at the end of the day have a show or a performance?
It's a difficult task, having to do with the psychology of the artist mainly. About the
next to you, watch
the technicians, the technicians, and my crew, or whatever crew comes in the theater. It's easy. It's just they know their work. They know how to do. When it comes to the artists, either it's a musician or a writer or a player, or you have to give them what they want. You're here to serve them, but we have some limits. And the limits come when we have to talk about money. You have to rent some stuff for them, amplifiers, keyboard. They need the best they could have. But if we could afford it, first of all, and then the
Yeah,
next...
Technically, okay, don't you insist that they will send you in advance? I mean, prior to event, they will send you all the technical requirements, and that's one way. The other way is, don't you need to send them what is available in the theater? So this communication will come more closer as to be able to do the show. I mean, it's both ways. They need to send you what they require, how do they see it, and then I think you should send them some. And this communication, isn't it the way that it will bring the best solutions?
Well, that's how we do it.
Agreements.
I mean, we first send an email with asking them to send us a technical writer with their needs, how many performers, what are they playing, instruments, and if we have them here, we gladly let them use them. They're open to anybody that comes here. And if not, then we have to give alternative solutions. Either they will find themselves something, or we will rent from somewhere. And yeah, that is bringing closer our two sections, the crew with the artist.
Okay. So, move to the artists.
Always used when it comes to music and art.
There is a reason why you're sitting next.
I know. Please.
So I will go to that. So, in what extent, okay, you influence as a creative person, as a performer, or as an artist, or as a sound designer, okay, in what level you influence the choice of venue?
Wow, excellent question. The project usually defines which venue in our little island, but I don't want this to be strictly about Cyprus, or let's say in every situation the ideal venue is particular. For say, if I'm having a symphonic piece played by a symphonic orchestra, I'm not worried if they're going to play well only. I'm not worried only if there's going to be people around. I'm really worried if I'm going to have my product recorded, multi-tracked, put it online, have it mixed in my studio or in my sound engineer's place, to have the maximum. And it's not only the day of the show, it's what's keeping after the show. So the multi-mic and multi-track recording in the symphonic environment for me is very important. If I'm having a theatrical play that I really gonna need some really big booms, the subwoofers are really important, because people are gonna feel that boom. I'm all about what people are gonna feel and the presentation of the creation. Let's say I'm writing a song for a 5-people band. The song is there. It's not. I'm not as sensitive as I was in my early ages. That the outcome was only the performance. I am really more. I'm giving you this. Make the most of it. This is not only my, let's say, business anymore. It's your business as well.
I see a fear in your face when you talk about walking in a venue and do the job. I mean,
yeah, but it's not only for my part. It's more for the producer's part, for the venue's part. Mm-hmm. This is it. Present it well. We all be happy. Mm-hmm. Not only money-wise, artistic-wise. You know, our specialties are being put to work. So what I expect is communication, because I had an experience with another venue that a 6-people band was performing. We requested 6 monitors, we got 2. And that was on the day of the show. So that's miscommunication. I am, on the day of the show, working in the venue, having 2 monitors only. I'm requesting 7. Where are the rest? Now, this communication takes a lot of stress and misunderstandings away. But truly, like Andreas said, there must be limits. If I am really going to go for a symphonic orchestra multi-recording piece, I'm going to have to pick a place that can afford this load of mics, of multi-track recording, of space, you know. Of course.
Well, mind you, if you have a good venue, you don't need the microphones for a symphonic orchestra.
However, but still, I want to record it. I want to have it. I want to, and the venue is going to have the rights of the recording, right? Isn't that how it goes? The venue keeps the recording rights. So that's also for them a good opportunity. If one of the 100 pieces that nobody heard that I wrote, if one of them make it big, the venue is going to be on there. So it's the product is the art. If I'm creating, it's not only me that is going to be getting out of it.
And of course, you're giving out to audience, and that's what Andreas said before. I mean, audience is the
yeah. So it's a win-win situation when everybody's pushing towards the best. Now, if the venue has the equipment, of course, that's more than how it looks, and the acoustics and the people that can afford to have inside the show. So the technical part is number 1 for me as a creator. I really think that giving it the way I want to present it to 10 people, for me personally, makes no difference if it's 10,000 people or 10 people. Because giving it slightly with a few mentions and some things that are not there, it's not going to be how I was planning to present it. So for me, it's more important to have the tech support, and that's what's going to define the venue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Andreas, how do you set the goals, okay, after this communication with all these people, understanding their needs, understanding their wants? They focus to a specific market or to multi-market. But today's changes is they want to make any kind of performance in a venue. So you're called to design a sound system. How you set the goals for the sound system, which is a multitasking system, serving all these different kind of performances?
But like we said, you sit down with the client. You sit down with the client, you need to let him, you need to understand from the client really what are the needs, you understand?
But if it's possible, I mean, the clients sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, they want everything. They want to do everything because they want, you know, one day to make cinema, and the next minute they have an opera, and the next minute they have a live concert.
We're talking about investments. At the end of the day, are investments.
Is that all about? I mean, is money talks? I mean, or there is restrictions? I mean, sometimes this venue is good for these performances.
Look, an owner is trying always to create and to achieve the maximum out from the venue. You understand? I guess that we see like this. You can see today there is the trend to be, yes, a theater, you understand? But today we're in a theater, but we're doing a mini talk show.
Yeah.
You understand? So you need always to sit down and find the goal on what you want to achieve. You can, as I said to you from the beginning, you're talking about investments. Now, you need to make the right investments. You understand? Today is an investment, even if you're entering in a shop, you're going to buy a mobile phone. You understand? You're talking about thousands of euros to buy a phone. So when you sit down and you need to try to find the right technology with the client, my goal is try always to really focus on what the clients want.
And
okay?
what can achieve.
Okay? Like we said, and I'm stressing out the fact, technology matter, okay, today. Okay, people, they know what is technology. people, if we were talking about 10 years ago, when you were talking about a digital console, what is a digital console, okay? And they were expecting still to find a desk with thousands of knobs, like everyone started at the end. And today you say, sometimes, you need to buy a desk, it's costing some thousands of euro. But I can do that with an iPad. No, it's not the same sometimes. You understand? You may achieve, but it's not the same result. Okay. So the goal is you don't need to convince your client always that the technology is always the solution, but you need to try to find the tools that they will help the client to achieve their goals. That is, at the end of the day, the bottom line.
Exactly. Talking about digital, I will come to you now. So, serve the various production requirements, from opera to cinema and everything. I suppose that today's technology, you can manage to have everything under your fingers. I mean, is that possible to play, I mean, to have the infrastructure? And I'll give an example what I mean. I mean, we used to have a stereo system, left, right, a center cluster, maybe a surround system, up to there. But changing performances between, you have to change the way the sound system responds, yeah? I mean, the processing, the way you're sending, the routing, and all this. What is today's technology which you can handle all these to change? I mean, tonight we have a talk show, and in a couple of hours we're going to move out and they're going to have a concert. Is that possible with today's technology? Because we needed a lot of people to move everything, and changing, patching, routing.
Obviously, today's technology has helped a lot in turnover of shows, whether it's a musical theatre to an opera to live performances. Today's technology does simplify everything. Coming back to George, where he was talking when he gets into a venue and he wants to know the possibilities of what the venue can do, and obviously he wants subwoofers for the big boom, but then there's something happening in the back corner and he needs a speaker there. So today's technology does help a lot and can help George if he comes with his vision and says, I want a sound in the back left corner, and then I want a lot of sub. So you have a digital mixing console, you have network audio protocols now, so even if you don't have an audio line up in the corner, but you have to have a sound up in the corner, you can do it through a network. So today's technology does help a lot, obviously with communication with George or anyone who's bringing the content, and they say that we need a lot of sub for this production because there's a lot of explosions. Yes, okay, fair enough. You can bring the subs, you can route it with your digital consoles, you can do whatever you want. When it comes to audio networking, you can send sound anywhere, even if I wouldn't do it on Wi-Fi, but you can even do it on Wi-Fi and send something in the corner. Now, from the sound engineer's aspect, the problem with the sound engineers nowadays is that everyone's worked on digital console and everyone has a preference. Technology changes fast. Today you have a sound console, tomorrow it's outdated. Unfortunately, sound engineers, the price of sound consoles are not cheap. So, you know, someone like Andreas will make a big investment, he'll buy a sound console, he'll buy a new line array sound system. And then when he gets a technical rider, they say, we want to use X brand. And Andrea has Y brand. So when he goes to the sound engineer and he says, listen, I don't have X brand, but I can offer you Y brand. Y brand might be better, but because he's used to X brand, or he has the show loaded on his stick, and all he wants to do is put a USB and push, recall. So now this is where it gets a bit more complicated, because you can't cater for everyone. So Andrea can't buy 15 consoles because today he wants to use X, tomorrow he wants to use Y. So from the sound engineer's perspective, now they also need to compromise. I want X brand, but learn Y and Z, just in case, because if you're touring, you need to know more than one console. It's not as easy just to put a stick in and push recall, because at the end of the day, it's also the budget for the production. Because I come into Rialto Theatre, they have X, So they have Y, I want X. So your cost is going up because now you have to rent the console. So George will come in here with a vision, and this is what he wants. I want this. But then the sound engineer says, yes, we can do it, but we can't use Rialto's stuff.
Let me just put, if we have a production company, and they prefer to come with their own desk. That's what they know, that's what they're using, and whatever. Is that a way that we can patch our sound system and our equipment, protecting the venue, okay, from, we know what we're talking about, just protect the venue, give him the feeds, okay, and play with your console. Is that possible today with Ether Sound? I mean, all these protocols, which you can route all the speaker and everything, so they are just patching their production equipment and...
Obviously, any sound system, the heart of every sound system is a DSP.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, on your DSP is where you're going to do all your final equalization because, you know, fair enough, you don't want to put the equalizer on your console, and then tomorrow someone comes with another console, and then your sound system doesn't sound as good as it was intended. So the DSP is the heart of your system. It's the protection, it's the limiters, everything is on your DSP. Your amplifiers have also got their amplifiers have gone from the good old Crown Macrotech to digital amplifiers with DSPs on board. You can load your speaker presets on there. You can put protection on your amplifier. So yes, you can come with another console. The feeds are easy now. If it's a Dante-enabled console and you have a Dante environment, or if it's just your analog lines going direct to the amplifiers or to the DSP, you can plug in, you can use what you want. But this
is a better solution for one.
Yeah, so you can definitely. Now, coming back to the change of the theatre, I did a theatre in the Middle East where it started out just to be a normal lyric theatre, and then ended up being a multifunction with classical to operas, etc.
Or a wedding in the
Yeah, or weddings, yeah, they're big on weddings there. And from something where it was just a normal lyric theatre in the beginning to become this massive multifunction venue, obviously with the help of acoustic consultants and stuff, we had made orchestra shell mechanical, you know, massive orchestra shell goes over the audience and comes back. If you're going to do something for the live events, you push a button and the partitions in the wall would change for the acoustics. So, you know, with technology, you can even play with acoustics in a venue. And it helps a lot in the sense where, okay, in the Middle East, there's no budget, so I want to do this. And, you know, one of the options was
everything ended up to money, as Andreas say.
Yeah, so there you can either do it by hand, but you know we want to push a button, so push a button, and the whole acoustics of the venue was from day to night, night to day. It just changed, and it was.
Yeah, but we are very close to automation now. Everything is a press of a button. Yeah.
Yes, no, fair enough. Press of a button, but the problem there is that. When I press that button, what's going to happen and how much does the other end cost? Because the button's a cheap part.
Oh, yeah.
That is where sometimes you say, I just need to push a button. How much it can cost to push the button? You need to know what there is behind that button.
Yeah.
Maybe there are 10 racks of equipment to allow you to push that button. So budget is getting involved.
Yeah, again, goes back to money. Back to Andreas. Okay. Are there any policies, restrictions for the technicians, engineers using the theatre facilities? So, you're running a theatre, you're a technical, I know that you hang every day, all time around, rather something is on maintenance, something is needs repair, or something, you know, it has to be new installation, all these things, and you have people walking in, engineers, and sometimes not engineers, and sometimes people that they pretend to be. How you setting your restrictions or the way to avoid damages or
At first, you can find in Rialto's internet site, official site, that has all the list with all the things someone can use and are available to everybody that comes in the theater. And restrictions, again, comes to about the money. If a show has the budget.
Well, we're not here to talk about money today. So let's leave the money in the corner, because that's not for us. We're into technology and into things. I know that money matters. I mean, money talks. But at the end of the day, creative people, they find their way. I'm sure about it.
Sure.
And I want to stand to this.
The sound engineer can play with 3 speakers and 1 microphone and get the whole band. But
things happen, yeah.
It has happened to our theater. Yeah. Before the new installation, we had an installation that was very, it was very good, but it didn't let you make all the kind of arts. Now with the line array, and it's more possible. The digital console is more possible to achieve that. Rather than that, I don't think there is an issue of coming to say no to a technician not to use something. But sure, I will say that Nick said in Cyprus we're more back than other countries. In other theaters in Europe.
Don't say that. We've seen performances that they're on high standards.
And we're doing it, yeah, we're doing it, but that has to do with the artists and the technicians. It's very hard to do it. It's not like...
There's nothing easy in our lives, I mean, let's face it.
Well, it's easy in other theaters.
Yeah, even to carry fly cases is not easy.
It's easy in other theaters in Europe, that with the push of a button turns everything up. And here we need 10 people for just one thing that they could do in seconds. Mm-hmm. Isn't it?
Right. So, George, what's next? What you wanted? How you wanted it to be? I mean,
I am not
the idea of
I am happy with what it is, but I can tell there is much room for improvement. Mm-hmm. Our collaboration with Andreas goes years back. Whenever I bring a piece for a play or a dance show, whatever, I leave Andrea to touch it.
Do you do that with other venues as well?
No.
I know, because Andreas is next
I know Andreas, and it's been like many times. At the beginning, I was very cautious. I expect a flat sound. I have my monitors at my studio. I have my double monitor and a third monitor pair, so I know what my sound is. I walk into a play, into a venue, and I hear my track, and it's distorting. I know it's not my fault. I've booked, I've finished. I know it's done. I can hear it in my home setup, and it sounds as I want it. What I'm trying to do is bring that over here. Yeah. With Andrea touching, let's say, I remember this one time, should I take 3 dBs down from 180 hertz on the EQ? Like, go ahead, yeah, I was about to tell you that. And he goes and does it, and yeah. And I am trusting Andreas. So the collaboration with the venue creates this communication and this trust. And let me tell you another example. A theatrical play this year in Nicosia, in one of the smaller places, where the ventilation is louder than the speakers, I was actually telling the director, don't worry, I'll watch it in Limassol. And that's a true story. So I gave my play. I know this is what the venue can do. I cannot do miracles. Mm-hmm. I mean, the ventilation is right behind me. I cannot do the so volume, the level.
Limits.
Yeah, my dynamics have to be not this much, but this much, and everything up higher than the ventilation sound. I knew that going to that place. So I adjusted negatively my sound with less dynamics, because the venue cannot afford something better. But coming to a bigger venue like Rialto that has better technological and audio systems, I am more relieved. I can feel safe. And I'm going to add to it. I remember once coming here and asking Andreas to use the surrounding, right? And we did. We used the surrounding because the plane was coming from that side. And the audience had to feel it coming from behind. And that was the place that was going to get bombed. So by the time you hear the plane coming, you start getting frustrated. Oh my God, it's going to bomb this place.
Where do you put this limit? I mean, I'm not performing. Finish. Is that a line
yeah,
that you
I said, I'm done. We're not doing this. In situations where I feel that the technical team or one of the venues that has a saying person is not following my vision and keeps monitors or mics in the back room, he's not giving it front just because his opinion. But this is my vision. This is not your opinion. You know your venue, great. I know my project. I'm going to need
done it? Have you
blah,
cancelled?
blah, blah.
Have you cancelled the...
I said it's cancelled, but people intervene and the show actually
Show
must
must
go
go
on.
on.
But I was really, it wasn't a theatrical play commissioned 2 months, go to the rehearsals, compose the music, do the whole editing part and present it. It was a very personal project. So it wasn't something that I was really doing it for the money. It was my statement. 2 years of work, I want to present this, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to hear it like this, and I don't want anybody to hear it like this. I'd rather do it next year in 2 years properly. So a personal project. And I believe
is your,
yeah, it's very different. I'm not part of a company. I'm not answering to any producer. I'm putting money for this. It's my,
money game.
hobby. It's my investment as a show.
Yeah.
So not having this collaboration and communication or the line where what I get to say is what I need to do on this project. If let's say Andreas comes here and he tells me, I think you don't need a stereo mic, that guitar. I'm going to tell him, I think I do.
I suppose, though, there
something like
is a solution
Mozart.
about it. I mean, before you choose a venue, okay, if it's a production and it has a sound engineer and a lighting engineer, a proper production, he will visit the venue, make a site visit, and decide if we can do it there or not, but not cancelling a show. This upsets me always. I mean, hearing that something is being cancelled, especially these days. So, I think the best way is, as a production company, visiting a venue, okay, and see this. I don't know, the infrastructure, the facilities, the people. Do we communicate with these people?
I'm going to make a suggestion to all of my colleagues and all of the producers and sound engineers. If there is a list of equipment to be used, it has to be signed. There must be contracts, must be clear. It has to be crystal clear. I have this system. Do you have it? Yeah, I have it. I haven't seen it. If it's written, it's there. Even if I saw it.
Is it working?
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's going to be there, or even worse, if it's going to work.
Inside? Yeah.
Now, we are actually discussing problems, though. But what I want to hear from you guys, from the four of you, for my work as well, is what is the next step in technology? What can I do? Can I break the audience in half? Half of them is hearing re, the other half is hearing re flat.
Well, I'm sure
I mean?
Andreas and Nick, they have to send you a lot of things to read.
I know, and it's never ending. But what can I get in my country? Yeah. Where are we?
Well, so I give a point. I mean, I think, Nick, if you've seen that, are we today, okay, in the age of we can point source sound, okay, on a specific seat?
Oh, seriously, can we do that?
It all comes back to budget. There is a technology
no,
out
I'm
there.
not talking, I'm talking about the technology.
No, there is definitely the technology. This.
I mean, I've heard the technology, and I don't know if it's on or if
Yeah,
it's a fake news,
yeah.
but you can point source and send sound to a specific seat, and either it's going to be different from the next seat. I mean, it can be something like sending a translator of English in that seat and a translator of German in the next seat.
Not that easy yet.
Not that easy. The technology is there. They are busy
Godfather.
working on it. Obviously, to pinpoint something like that, you need 3D modeling of the venue. There's a lot of work behind. It's going to cost an enormous amount of money if you want something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But now coming back to George. Okay, George started left and right. Cool. That's CD player. He was happy with
Some
that.
good subs.
And then
Yeah,
all of a
it was-
sudden the subwoofer started coming, and I thought, okay, wait a minute, now we can do something with subs. And then obviously the surround sound obviously helps George to do,
Not horizontal, but vertical
yeah.
as well.
But now there's obviously, the subwoofer can do so much. You can hear and feel the bass and stuff. But at the end of the day, you can get shakers and movers which are placed under the seats. So even that low frequency where you're sitting now, and I can hear the subwoofer, it does, your chair starts to rumble. And now coming back to your explosion that you said, the technology is there. It's not expensive. It's
To use it.
it connects to the subharmonic channels of the subwoofer, exact same as the subwoofer.
So
And it's-
basically, breaking the wall, right? What we're talking about is not a three-dimensional show; it's a four-dimensional show, where
Yeah. So now you're going to
people
get that feeling
are
now.
surrounded up and down from outputs, right? We can actually give the audience a new experience. through
Dolby Atmos,
technology.
exactly how Dolby Atmos is doing
But
it now,
no,
where you're getting the top.
But
You can
actually,
definitely,
is out right now from a well-known French company that is in this industry, quite famous for line array. Yes, there is new technology coming. It's here, is out on the market, and is multi-dimensional stage. Okay, we are always thinking the left and the right, sometimes the center channels. But no, today there is a technology that is coming out quite aggressively on the market, that is maybe
X, Y, Z.
correct. So basically we start seeing venue and theaters with 5 clusters on front, where you need to have even desk, and you need to rechange the way that you're mixing. That basically is adding, it's not three-dimensional sound, it's the 4th dimension, that basically is the depth of the stage. For instance, if you have an orchestra where the violin, they are not on the left, but they are on the deep side of the stage, all the way that the sound engineer will mix, it will be distributed on this 5 cluster on the front, okay, and it will be dispatched to you with a different delay, with a different mix, okay. I really highly recommend, okay, that you're going to see this company, okay? It's not clearly, we can even say the company is L Acoustic in this moment is a good advantage. I suggest that you're going to see the LISA technology that is a multi-front view, is changing theater and live performance. In the next 5 years, there will be not any more left and right. Let's take it there. There are well-known brand of audio desk that they are starting implementing the algorithm to do it this. So, like Nicola was saying, there are changes, there are shakers that you can add the emotions on the theaters. In theaters, you can add it. That is, can we do this tomorrow? Theoretically, yes. Going back to Andrea, we are coming from, when you said in Cyprus is a bit more difficult than in other countries. Cyprus is quite advanced, okay? We're doing things ahead of times, certain times, okay? Is depend the feeling that we are putting on what we are doing, you understand? And one of the point where today is why we are here, sitting on the stage. At the end of the day, all of us, we love what we are doing. Okay? When you will start keeping the respect of this, and we know that Andrea, he loved to spend his life behind the desk. Now he's technical manager, he's dealing with other 10 million problems, you understand? But at the end of the day, if we know from where we start, okay, we will be always here. Technology is here, producers, they are here, engineers, they are here. At the end of the day, you need to enter a theater as you are the audience of the theater. I remember once I was in Vegas with my wife, and we went to see Celine Dion. My wife, let's go to see Celine Dion, let's go to see Celine Dion. No, I don't want to go to Celine Dion. So she bought the most expensive ticket. First row in center. Trust me, it was an investment. I complained to my wife, you spend a lot of money, you bought the worst ticket, acoustically it will be bad, because I'm on the first line, actually I had the reclining seat, okay? And they said, but I want to be there, okay? I want to be back, you understand?
By the desk.
At the end of the day, it was a good show. We had emotion, okay? And I'm selling sound, I'm implementing sound. At the end of the day, it was a great show, the sound, it was great. But at the end, I left with a memory. And that is what we need, everyone. It doesn't matter what we're doing, let the audience leave the door with a memory.
Exactly, exactly. So creating pictures with some
Can I
painting.
add on, Andrea? In the procedure, when you preparing a show, you're giving the show, and the show is ending, and people were working out. What really matters is what people are taking with them on their exit. I truly agree with that. That is all the money in the world. I totally agree. But in the procedure of creating, organizing, if technological issues are resolved faster, if communication is flowing better, then the people will take something much better with them, stronger. Even in the first moment that I am thinking of a show, if I think about the venue that's going to host it, then it's a success. Because my environment is part of the show in the creation situation. I'm not coming here with the show ready, finished, and right, let me see the venue. You know, it's different. You know, a show prepared for Rialto and a show for an ancient theater like Curio. In the essence, in the base, I am already thinking Curio. I'm already thinking Rialto. Considering the technology part resolved, is actually painting in the venue.
So we're coming to this, that we're here to serve the artist, to make him happy. And that it's all about. It's not about arguing with him, or it's to make him happy.
You have a choice. I mean, to choose the artist. Working in your theater.
My job is to make that guy there that wants to play to feel happy about his, to feel free to play and perform. And we're nowadays, as I said before, in Cyprus, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you know that, you left it. We didn't have sound engineers. Sound engineer was a technician, the electricity guy that opened powered the console on, and nowadays we have actually good sound engineers.
Educated, experienced
yes.
people, yeah.
Very good.
Well, that's why, I mean, it's good to discuss all this, because as we said and as we started, and we will end, is communication is the best thing. sharing all our ideas between artists, technicians, engineers, designers, owners, bringing this together, I think we're gonna have the best possible, at the end of the day, experiences with audiences.
Allow me, the moment that we're closing down, we wrap it up, that most probably is a strange period, clearly.
Now, yeah.
Is the darkest period, okay? I believe that the government in this moment, okay, because we're talking about technology, investment. In this moment, the industry is down at their knees. And everyone inside the industry, okay, from the theater owners to technicians, composers, everyone is down on their knees. This industry in this moment need the support of the government, and do not forget this person, okay? In all the countries in this moment, they are thinking about the tourism. The solution is the tourism, okay? Let's support the tourism. This industry, without the support of the government, it will go to a black period. And this black period, we will not look, I want a new desk, or I want new this, new that. We will face other problems. So in this moment, I believe that the support of the government for all the operators in this industry is the priority.
Yes, what we can do though, from our side of view, is being more creative. I mean, this time is when people coming to creativeness. I mean, when you're facing problems, it comes out from you, you know, some power which you want to be more creative and make things happen. So I think let's fight that. Okay.
But you need the support.
You need support. Definitely agree.
So the government could
if it comes,
support
we're going to say welcome.
if the government could support more, of course, but also the people who have music in their lives constantly. The moment we wake up, they have music until they go back to sleep. Support your artists, especially now, and they will give it back to you. I totally agree with.
Is the heritage of the
guys?
country.
We all agree.
It's kind of
but
like
this is another discussion
comment,
which we
say
have to
something.
take.
Yeah, but we wrap it up because
totally
we are
agree.
talking about technology.
It's
Technology is
good
an
to be heard.
investment, but there is a reality.
But
that
there's
in this
people
moment we are
who
facing,
drive the
and
technology
they are
and work
facing.
it. Yeah.
So let's make more sound. Let's make more performances. Let's be creative. Make some more music. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It was a nice discussion. I really enjoyed it. Okay, and we're gonna have tomorrow, everyone, the other two sessions, which we're gonna have. The first session is gonna be the building strategy based on acoustics and technology. So, taking what we've said today, I'm sure it's been heard. So, the panel tomorrow is gonna be with Marina Maleni, Secretary of CY Stat, moderating. Georgia Deutscher is the Chief Executive of Rialto Theatre. Mr. Vassos Argyridis is the Director of Limassol Particular Theatre. And Mr. Andy Parchili, Artistic Director of Kypria International Festival. These people, they're going to tell us their way of how they're thinking, how they building a strategy based on acoustics and technology in venues. And the second session, it will be the audio art and the artists. George is going to be with us again tomorrow with Leah Karaki, performance maker, performer, and vocal artists. Yiannis Christofidis, music and sound designer. Of course, George, composer, producer, performer, sound designer. And Dr. Christina Georgiou, which is international awarded composer and screenwriter. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for coming, and see you tomorrow.